on my cloud. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Good morning again. So let's start today's class as early as possible. We have so many things to cover today. So let's just have a recap of what we discussed on Tuesday. And Tuesday, we introduced the concept of arrays. Why do we need arrays? Can anybody remind us what we discussed? Why do we need arrays? You can use the charts. You can unmute yourself. Why do we need arrays in our programming? Why? We introduced this concept on Tuesday. Can anybody remind us why we need arrays in our programming? What in the world is even array? That's the question first. Because once we understand what an array does, then I think it's so evident why we need that. Anybody willing to share? You can use the charts. If you don't want to talk, you can use the charts. Why do you think we need arrays in programming? This is not just for object-oriented language. Jackson, okay. I thought you wanted to. Why do you think we need arrays? This is not just important for object-oriented programming language. It's also important for all the procedural language. So, what do you think? And on Tuesday, we started this conversation with what is an array? And on Tuesday, we define array as collection, list of values. So in any program where we want to handle more than one value associated to a particular variable. So when we have more than one value to be associated with a single container, a variable, just one variable name, we need what? We need an array because I showed last week, if you can remember, on Tuesday rather, I was showing like we cannot define like integer car equals to 3, 4, 5, 3, 5, 6, 7. We can't do that. Integer nums apple equals 5, 6, 7, 8. No, our integer data type cannot do that. Our integer data type cannot hold more than one value for a single variable, for a particular variable. So in order to hold one value for a single variable, more than one value for a single variable, what should we do? Then we need to create an array. And I think from lesson 2 until this specific lesson, we have been working with just variable holding, variable storing just one value, variable attached to just one value. However, if we have a specific variable that has list of values, so for instance, cars, variable cars, I'm just naming my variable as cars, and within the cars, I want to store the different types, the different types of car. I wouldn't just say car 1 equals to, string car 1 equals to Toyota, string car 2 equals to no. That's really not practical. And that will increase our technical debt in programming language. That's what we call it, technical debt. So much lines of code to write, and we're not being efficient. So how do we do this? How do we store more than one values attached, to a single, associated to a single variable name? We use what we call an array. An array is like a list, a list of value, collection of value attaching to just one single variable. Any question on this? So next class, can anybody brief or define what an array is? Any question in terms of if we understand what an array is and why in the world we need them? Why do we need them? Yes, thank you. So, last week we started also we talked about how do we declare an array. And we say when we want to declare our arrays, always the array data type. Don't forget, we talked about the different terminologies that we have. We talked about the different symbols that are very important when declaring our array. And we talk about the open and close square brackets. Open and close square brackets, and that is used for two purposes in declaring our array. One, it's used to declare our array itself. And also, this open and close square bracket can also be used for what? To index, to get the location of a specific value in our array, the index of a specific value, the location in which that value is saved in our array. And we talked about how to declare an array itself. That is your array data type, the open and close square brackets. Don't forget, that is very important because that tells the compiler, oh, we're working with an array here. You can't just say int and you just the array name and no. You will get an error. So we need the open and close what? Square brackets, our open and close square brackets. Very important because that tells the compiler, it tells the computer, hey, slow down, we're working with an array data type here. So we have our array data type. It could be integer, it could be the primitive data type, it could be the reference, we could use floats, double, string. That's the data type, depending on the values we want to save or we want to store in memory. So if it's an integer we are working with, we are saying just int, then don't forget the open and the close square brackets, very important. Then we have the name, the name, the name of the array. That's just like our variable name itself. So we can also do this in another way. So the array bracket, I mean the open and close square bracket, can either be attached to the data type of the array or the array name. So you can either put it in the middle like this, or you put it at the end when declaring. The two works the same way. However, the first type of declaration is the generally used, widely used when we're declaring our array. So that's always the data type of the array. It could be int, it could be float in this example that we have on our lesson notes. Then the name of the array, just like prices that we have here. However, the data type of the array and the data type of the values. Don't forget, very, very important. The data type of the array and the data type of the values must be the same. So you cannot declare a float data type for the array. And when you're initializing your variables that will be in this array, you're putting string, for instance. No, that's not possible. So you're populating this array with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's impossible. That will not work because we have the data type as floats. So you need what? A floating point values, a floating point values to be saved in this array or to be stored in this array. And that's when we are talking about, the decimal point, 2.00, 3.2, 4.5, 6.5 as our values. If you have an integer, then the values are initializing, we are populating this array with has to be an integer. Any question on this? Thumbs up if you understand what I just explained, Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I can see those thumbs up. So it's very, very important. We can use any of this declaration. However, the first declaration, that is your open and close square bracket, immediately after the data type of the array, is mostly used, it's widely used, but it doesn't mean if you use the second type of declaration, you will be getting an error message. No, we won't be having an error message. However, this is more easier, for readability. Even the compiler understands immediately once it follows the data type. Oh, now I'm working with an array and not just uh, a specific primitive data type. So it's telling the compiler here, hey, I'm working with a float array. I'm working with an array that will be storing the values as a floating variables, as a floating values. And it's just, I think I prefer to use the first type of declaration as well, because this is quite easier to read. It's quite, anybody can pick up my code and say, oh, I think she's trying to work with an array here. So trust me, you can even use any of this declaration method. Any question on this? So on Tuesday in our last class, we discussed how do we initiate, how do we initiate our array. And in that, we were talking about immediately after, in the same line of declaration of our array, we have the equals to new, and that's when we are using the object. We talked about an array class as a what? As an instance. So we're talking about we need an object. So we can either do it in two ways. However, I think I was being specific that most of the IDEs, most of our programming environment that we have now, because array is something we work with as a programmer, we work with on daily basis as a programmer. So most of the IDEs, you don't have to import the way we are importing the scanner class, because most of the IDEs have this pre-written. They have you don't have to import. So that's one way to initialize. You're opening your new the array data type, and you're giving the value, the size of the array. However, we can also initialize our array using what we call an initializer list. What does this do? What does this do? So simple. It means at the point of declaring our array, we are also initializing. At the point of declaring the array, we are also initializing the variable to the array. However, this specific method, this specific approach is used when we know what? When we know the size, the values, when we are sure of the values to be populated in this array. Do you understand me? Any questions so far? Thumbs up if there's no question. I really need you guys to get this because it's very, very important. And we will start building up on so many concepts. We will start linking loops with arrays, and it's so important you understand the basis. So we can use the initializer list, which is what it does what? We do everything in just one step. We're declaring and initializing at the same time. And in our last class, I made mention of the three most common, symbols that we need. And we just talk about the open and the close, which is used to declare an array itself. We talk about the curly braces. And the curly braces is just like, the block of the block of the code. And this is where we put our values, with these, the compiler understand, oh, this is the values associated to this specific array unit. So we're saying, how do we separate the different variables, the different values within this array? I'm sorry, not variable, values, the different values? How do we separate the different values within the specific unit array? We use what? Commas. And this, we're talking about the three important symbols that are important when we're declaring our array, and we can see how using the initialize a list has used these three symbols. So the first symbols here is actually the open and close brackets, followed by our curly braces, which is extremely important when we have more than one line of code. It tells the compiler this specific line is attached to this array. So our curly braces is always not just for indentation, it also helps readability. Even as a programmer, you want someone else to pick up and it's not like, oh God, where is this array starting? Where is this ending? So we have the curly braces and we have the comma separating variables. So here, we are not declaring the size. So what is missing with this initializing list? There is the new operator is nowhere to be found here, and we are not declaring the size of the array. So with this, the computer automatically, gets what is the length of this array? What is the length? And, save this length automatically. You don't have to declare, oh, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 10, 10 variable array, 10 size, the size of this array state. So we're not telling the compiler, hey, I need to store the values to expect for the specific array is 10, up to 10 values. No. Of course, the compiler understands that you are you're storing 10 values within this array. We're storing 5 values for the letter grades variable name or variable array, something like that. So this is another way to work to declare our array. But this is majorly used when we are sure, this is only applicable when we are sure of the values and the number, the number of the elements, in our array. Any question on this? Any question? Okay. So, this is just emphasizing what I've explained previously, that with this, in this kind of method, array declaration and initializing in a step, we don't need the operator new. Why? We don't need that. We don't need it. We don't need, don't need to declare the size of the array. You don't have to, because it is automatically determined the size. The compiler automatically determine the number of elements in this array. An initializer list can be used only in array declaration. Don't forget, only in array declaration. We should understand this, and you should open your curly braces when you have more than one line, and you should separate each of the values with what? With a comma. And a question on this. On Tuesday class, we also describe, explain how do we access, how do we access each element within our arrays. And we emphasize to access each element within our array, we used what we call like the index of the value. That is the location of that value on our array list. So what is the location? And we understand the computer starts our index from 0. So that's location 0 until, for instance, if we are working with 10, just gonna go back a bit. So here we're working with 10 values here. So location 1, which will be index 0, is what? The value here is 174. That's index 0. And when we're talking about index 1, that's 323. until the last index, which will be 9. Don't forget, the way the compiler works is always the number, the size of the array minus 1, because the index starts from 0. You get the difference between the length and the index of an array. The length is actually the total number of the values, the number of values when you're counting the number of values. So in this sense, the number of values within our array is 10. However, when we want to check the location of that value, we're using the index. And the way the compiler understands the index is that it start counting not from 1 as human, but from 0. So the index of the state element starts from index 0 until index 9. Any question on this? Thumbs up if there's no question. And let's just write a simple code just to illustrate what we have discussed so far. I'll give few minutes. Let me know. Thumbs up once your IDE is opened and you're ready to code along with me. I just want to be sure we're on the same page, and I want you to follow along with this code. So I'm explaining the way I'm writing. Bianca, thank you. Bianca, please, I'll give you a few minutes, just a minute rather. Come on, a minute. Set up a minute to open your IDE, and let's have this simple, it's just simple description, demonstration of how we declare an array, we initialize the array, and how we can index, check the location of the array. So the name of this array I'm creating here is the types of car. That's the name of the file. Yep, I don't need the main. Yes. Thumbs up, everybody. You're on your Heidi Hayes and you're ready to code. I only got 3 people ready. Okay, Lex is ready. More people ready? Yep. Thank you. Okay. So let's see. In we do what? Don't forget, immediately after our class, we have to open our main method. And we will discuss about other types of methods when we get to. So you don't have to type everything. You can just try the main and put it in that. And so I like to comment, and this is like, so anybody picks up my code and understand. So what is the purpose? What do we want to do? What are we going to illustrate with this example? So we want to demonstrate how to declare and initialize a collection types of cars, sorry. Initialize collection. I need to hide here. Okay, good. So what do we have to do first? This is the problem at hand. We want to, we want to have a collection. That's just the point. We want to have collections of cars. So we are not just declaring cars as in just Toyota. So we want Toyota, Mercedes, Jeep, we want Nissan, we want Chevrolet, we want Ford. It's all collection that we have in our store. So we have all this collection, but we can't just declare car 1 equals Toyota, car 2, no, that's not efficient enough. So what do? We need an array. And how do we do that? We need to declare and initialize an array to hold all these values in just one single variable. So don't forget, when you're working with strings, so it's very, very important. We declare the data type of the array and the what is the variable name we're working with here. So here we have what? We have declared our array. What have we done here? We have tell the compiler, hey, I am working with an array here. And the name of the array is cars, and the data type of this array is what? Is string. Any question on this? So let's populate, let's initialize the variables, the values within this array. And you can always initialize it as anything. I'm just gonna use float. Don't forget our double column when we are working with string data type, a single column when we're working with character data type. Very important. We don't need any column when we're working with integer or floats. So the second one is GMC. You can, this is just for demonstration purpose. You can use any car name of your choice. Toyota, uh, let me do another one, Dodge. Oh, this will always give me an error because string data type must always be what? Be in double column, inverted column. So the last but not the least on my list here is Nissan. Okay, so what have we done here? We have declared our array as cars, which what data type? The string data type. And we have initialized our array in just one single line. So we're using what we call what? An initializer list in this kind of example. Don't forget, I told you when we are using this kind of list, what happens? When we're using our array list, what happened? Initializer list, array list, the same thing. Trust me. Initializer list, you can also call it array list. When we're using this kind of list, what happens? The compiler automatically sets the length of the array. Because we're able to use this kind of list because we are sure, we know the values to be populated in this array. We are not asking the user to give us this value. We know the values. So we can, and we know the values and we are sure it's this number of lines. So we can always populate it immediately in just one single line. But in scenario when we don't know the values, we want to ask the user to prompt the user to give us this value. We cannot use the list method, array list method. No, because we don't know these values. But once we're sure we know these values, we can always use the array list method. And trust me, the compiler sets the length automatically. You don't have to declare this. So what should we do with this? We have declared, we have initialized our array in just single line. So let's print. I want you to print your favorite car. So whatever you think, which car you like most, you can print it here. So I want you to print your favorite car. So I'm gonna print my favorite car. And don't forget, we use the print statement for this purpose. You can either use a new line, you can print directly because that's the first print statement that we have here. And I'm telling my compiler to print my favorites. My favorite car is what? It could be anything. You can use whatever works for you. So how do I do this? How do I print my favorite car? Can anybody can anybody guess or explain? How do I print my favorite car? Please use the chat. Unmute yourself. How do I print my favorite car? I have declared. I have initialized. So how do I print? I'm sure my favorite car is one of these five cars I have initialized. So how do I print it? Anybody willing to share? Yes, thank you very much, Bianca. We have to check the index. We print that car using the index, the position, the location of that value in memory, the location on the array. So thank you very much, Bianca. That was very, so I do what? I go to, it could be Ford, it could be GMC, but my favorite car is Toyota, for instance. So let's see if we have, this is the end of name. I don't forget this. I'm going to some code and understand what I've done. And this is my end of class. So let's see what we have here. See if it's actually going to print what is in our index 3. That will be Dodge. Unexpected. I'm having error in line 5. No, this is not what I want to. Mm, yeah, there's a problem here. Okay, sorry. This is also running at the same time. Um, mm, mm, I don't know why I need to. I want to delete this. I don't know why is this coming in here. I don't need you. Mhm. Let's see. We're able to compile this current file. Yes. So my favorite car is Dodge because what I've done is from index 0, 1, 2, 3. However, I want my favorite car to be Toyota. What should I do? Well, I have to come here and change the index. So my favorite car is now Toyota. So that's how to access, that's how we're accessing our array. So we can also do another thing here. We can also replace the value, the value within our array in memory. So I want to replace GMC with master, for instance. How do I do that? All I have to do is to say cars, which is the value. What is the um location of GMC? 0, 1. That's 1. So I come in here and put 1 equals to. So what is the name I want to name? I'm master. I want it to be master. So with this, I have changed the value in location, index 1 from GMC to master. So how do I know I've really changed this value? Let's print what is in location 1 as well. So I can always copy this print statement and edit it, or you can, write it for time's sake. So I want to print what is now in location 1. So what is in location 1? And let me use the print statement and say, yeah. Any question on this? Thumbs up if you understand what I just did. You know, yes. How do we access the value within an array list? We access this value using what? Using the index, the location of that value in our array list. And here, because we are declaring and initializing, it's just one step, the what? The compile automatically. Automatically. You don't have to give the array size here. So now we can also do another thing, which I want us to let's test. Does the compiler really know? So let's test. Let's print the length of this array. So all I have to do is also my system dot have dot print. I'm printing a new line because I have few things. The length of the class array is, don't forget, we can calculate, and I'm telling to go. And how do I do this? Don't forget, on Tuesday, I talked about difference between methods and properties. But this is where, once you have the dot, class, it gives you both the methods and the properties you can work on with this array. I need the length. So here's an important question. Why do you think I don't have my parameters, the open and close bracket, after the length? Because this is a property, and the property is only looking for, we're only describing an array using the properties. Unlike when we are using a method, we want a specific operation, specific function to be done. But here we're only checking the length, so we don't need to pass the parameters because we're checking the length. And let's see if we have the length. So we're only working with properties. We do not. So the length of the array is 5. Any question on this? Okay. If no question, then let us continue with our. So I'm going back to, yes, here. Let us continue with. And don't forget, we were talking when we started this. I said you can always use an array list when you're sure of the number of values within this array. But when we are not sure, of the values, of the number of values, what should we use? Probably this is the option 2, when we want to ask the user, to give us this value. We want to populate our array using users' inputs. And this is not when we are sure of the values and we're declaring them, we're declaring and initializing them at a go. Yeah, we're not sure. We don't know because we want the users to provide this information. So what is the first thing to do? Of course, you declare what is the data type of this array. We open and close square brackets. Tells the compiler we are working with an array here. And of course, the name of the array, which is also similar to what we have as the variable name. And we come down and say, okay, this variable name, we're allocating, the first one, the first step here, we're declaring. Here we are allocating the space in memory. And we're telling the compiler, allocate up to 50, 50, create up to 50 space in memory for this specific array. So we're telling the compiler, this array will hold between what? 1 and 50 values. So we're saying between 0 and 49 index. Any question on this? I think this was the same declaration we had on Tuesday. So the first line is like declaring it. The second line tells the compiler, oh, I need to create some space in my memory. So I'm telling the compiler, at least this variable grades will be holding 59 values, 49 values, 50 values. That is from index 0 to 49. Okay. So let's talk about something more interesting now. And we're talking about how do you think we can populate more than one element in that kind of array when we are asking, here we're asking the users, we're telling the users to give the value. So how can we populate that into our array? What do you think we need to introduce? We need to introduce the previous concept we have learned in our lesson 5, which is the loops. And of the 3 loops, the most ideal loops for this kind of iteration, to populate our array is always the for loop. Why do you think the for loop is the ideal loop to populate our array? Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Don't forget, let's go back to the syntax of this array, the for loop array. In the for loop, we have our control variable initialize immediately. All the 3 requirements of the loops are in just one single line. And we also emphasize that the for loop is always used when we are sure of the number of iteration. We know the exact number of iteration. We don't know the values, but we know the size. You get it? We don't know. We're not sure of the values the users will put in. But of course, we know the size of the array. We know how many values this array will be accommodating or can accommodate. That's the word. Because it may not accommodate up to 50. It may not be taking, the values the users will be inputting may not be up to 50, but at least we have an idea of the total number of values that will be populated by the users. And of course, our Boolean condition, don't forget, which will involve a Boolean condition will involve our control variable here. Control variable is always the initial point, initial point will start in the loop. And of course, we need to modify the loops, else we'll have an infinite loop. So how do we modify the loop? We need our decrement operator, we need our increment operator in some scenario. We can also use our augmented operator. Can you remember this from our last lesson? I think lesson 5 when we're talking about the lip, and we will see how we can use all these concepts together. So let's go to model page. Is my screen still visible? Can you see my screen? Thumbs up if you're seeing my screen. Okay, thank you. So go on our Canvas page, and under the models, I want you to click on the lesson notes and in-class activities that we have. And we will be working with the program challenge 1 for this class. Program challenge is 1 to 3, and we're working with the challenge 1. It's taking a bit of time to think I opened it somewhere. I'm not sure. No, I didn't. So what do we want to do? What are we to do here? So this is a problem at hand. Find the total number of even integer in a list. So in an array is also known as a list of 5 numbers. If, for example, if the list contains 2, 3, 28, 1, 8, 6, 5, 9, 8, the answer is 4 because we have just 4. 2, 28, even numbers divisible by 2 remain at 0. That's what it means. So this is just an example. It means, just looking at this problem, it means what? We are getting our values from where? From our users. So let's understand the problem before we start coding. What are we doing here? What is the requirement here? This is just an example. This is not like example. So for example, so we have to what? We have to prompt the users to provide us the 5 integers because this is just an example. So we are not just populating this. So we want our programs to be interactive enough. Let's ask the users to give us, this 5 integers and check what are the even numbers within these 5 integers. Let's go back to our programming environment. Are we good to go? And what we have to do now is we're creating another file, and we are naming this as even numbers. That's what we want to do. We want to calculate even numbers. Even number, yeah. Don't forget, the first thing to do is always to open our main method. And I like to add end of main. And I also like to have end of class. Wow. Sorry, just a minute. So, what is the first thing to do? So, what I want to do here is I like to have both. This helps to know what we're doing. I need to download and open. It's difficult to just navigate. Uh, this is going to take a bit of my time, and I don't have such time. Okay, so I can do this now, and I don't want to waste so much time. Yeah. So we had to get 5 integers, if you remember the purpose. for this code and to calculate the total number of even numbers. So we want to demonstrate how to populate and access array elements with 5 integers. Oh my God, with 5 integers. It's big. With 5 integers. So that is actually the purpose. Demonstrate. It's hard before. Yeah. So this is what we are asked to do from that challenge. We had to demonstrate. We had to populate from the users, prompt the users to give us a specific 5 integers, and we had to calculate. So now we understand the purpose. What are we to do first? What are we to do first? So don't forget the life cycle of our program. We have to specify the requirements. We have to specify the requirements. We have to verify that requirement is efficient to provide a solution to this problem. So look at this problem as you're solving a problem, talk about solving problem solving skills, because this is actually a problem solving class. We're only using Java programming language to solve the problem. So we need to understand what are the inputs from the user. Don't forget, the input is users should enter 5 integer values. They have to be integers. It did not specify floats, so they have to be integer. So, and what is the output here? What are we to do? Here. We have to print the total number of even integers in our array. So this is what we are asked to do. We are to print the total number of integers. We are to print the integer. We are to print the integer and the total number of integer. So what is the first thing to do here? What are we going to do first? What do you think? Because we need to grab values from the user. Don't forget, we need our what? Our inputs, because we need the scanner. We need the scanner class. Import Java dot util scan. So I need to add a comment of what I've done here. And comment is I'm accessing this kind of class. Why is this kind of class important? We discussed that in our lesson 2. And that is what the class that helps us, to grab value from the keyboard. So now we understand this is the input. The user needs to input 5 integers, and we need to print the total number of the even numbers, from this integer. So the first thing we need to understand here, before writing the code, what is the first thing to do? To specify the requirement, understand what is the input, what is the output. Now I understand the input, I need to get values from the users. From there, I know I need to import my scanner class to grab value from the user. And secondly, what do I have to do? Of course, I need to declare my variable. Because I'm printing the total number. So I need to declare that variable. That's the purpose. So you can name it anything. It's always some naming is total even because that's what I'm printing. So I'm saying equals to 0 because I don't know it yet. I don't know it, but I just need to declare it. And because we will be working with a loop, I decided to use 0 because that will be the starting point, for my iteration. And we will explain this going forward. So what happens next? I'm working with an array to hold all this value. So I'm holding all the users' value in just in one single the array of integer. Don't forget I will declare our array. Very important, your open and close square brackets. And this is always the array name, the name we want to give. So I'm saying it's user input. You can name it anything. And don't forget the new keyword, a reserved keyword. And now the size. I know the size, but I don't know the values. So I cannot use the array list because I don't know the value. The user will be giving me the values. But I know the size. The size of my array is 5. So what else am I to do here? I have to create my scanner objects, which asks me to store whatever the value, it holds the value. So you can, we're declaring an object, and you can always name this the C, the C, SCNR is just a user defined name. You can name it whatever. So what am I telling this method? I'm using this system.in method. And what my system.in method tells the compiler is that you are grabbing this value from the keyboard. This value is coming from where? From the keyboard. Don't forget, it's coming from the keyboard. So now I need to prompt. I need to prompt the users for, integers. I don't know, why do I always put higher the integers? How do we prompt the users? Forget we use our system, our print statement that prints. You can either use a new line, you can use just print because that would be the first print statement we're using. So I'm giving some information. Enter 5. I'm telling the user to enter 5 integer variables. I'm handing that with me. So what last? We already have the variables. We already had to use it to enter the 5 variables, and we're working with an array. So how do we save? How do we populate this array? How do we store the 5 variables, the 5 integer variables the users give us? How do we populate it? How do we save it in the user input memory? How do we do it in this container? How do we save it in this specific container? And we said for this kind of activity, we already said we need what? We need what? Our for loop, which helps us to populate our array. So you can always for loop to populate the array. The syntax will follow. So we have to declare. We are declaring. We are declaring our control variable. And don't forget that starts at index 0. Starting at index 0, that's what the compiler understands, from index 0 until 4, because we have 5 integers. And we are saying the index, which is our conditional statement here, must be less than user's input, user's inputs. We can say it must be less than 5. However, it's not just the best approach. So we want to use the length properties. We want to use the length. Okay. Users input. Perfect. We want to use the length property. So we're saying the length of the array is 5. So you can either use index less than 5 or the length, which is the most ideal way to write this. Index plus plus. And what is this doing? This is modifying. I don't want to forget. I want to end. This is the end of my for. So what am I to do now? I want to read and store the inputs into a specific location that's into the different index, to the specific location in the array. So I want to store the value. That's what I want my loop to do. That's why I created this loop in the first instance. And how do I do that? Well, I have to come back to the what? To the name, the array that I've created, and specify that index. Don't forget index. From index 0, when it is 0, you're saving in index 0. When it's 1, you're saving in index 1, equals to my objects, my scan, this kind of objects, and the method that helps me to save it. This is a general way to point to an index. It's a general way to point to an index in our array. Any question? Thumbs up if you understand until this level. Thumbs up if you understand this. How do you want me to go above? Okay. Thank you. You can interrupt me. You can, let me know, and I will definitely go back on any of the concepts. So what are we to do here? Let's do something very interesting. I want us to do something very interesting here. And you know what I want us to do? I want us to test if the values were populated into the array. So have this really worked? Because you don't want to go further. You don't want to go further and finish all the line of code and now say, oh, this has not really worked. And you have to struggle, go back, blah, blah, blah. So let's check. It's very important we do this. And how do we do this? All we have to do is just to print. Let's print the value of the array. Let's print the values in the array. Let's just print one of the specific position index of the array. So I'm going to use my system that prints in new line statements. And I'm saying, I want to print, I want to print the fourth elements is the fourth element. That will be my what? My index 3, right? This is the same thing we did for the car thing. I want to access a specific, and this is inputs. Yep. I want to access, what am I doing here? I want to access that specific index. So let's run it and see what we have to see. Our arrays is being populated. Well, so I need to enter the integers first. So I want to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the integer I've entered. So let's see. So 4 is 1. Index 0 is 1. Index 1 is 2. Index 2 is what? Is 3. So my fourth index, my fourth element is my index 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So my fourth element is my what? Index 3. And that's 4. Any question? Thumbs up if you understand until the stage. And I notice I need to change something because this should not be a new line. Yeah, this should be in a single line. Where the user enter the value should be in a single line. Yeah. So that's the purpose of testing. Now I can see my what values, the values the user entered has been populated well into my array. So we can comment this out because this is just a test. This is just a test. It's not within our line of code. So what are we to do next? What do you think we're to do next? Now we need to solve the problem at hand, which is to do what? To check if the numbers I have written, or if the numbers the user has generated rather, is an even number or not. And how do we do this? How do we do this? So we can do this we can always do this in any way, you know, we can always do this however you like, but I would like to use another loop. So I'm using a for loop again. And this becomes to determine. So I'm using it to determine if each element, that's the value in, is even. And if is increments to the counter variable. What is our counter variable here? Our counter variable is the total. That's the total even. The variable we declare earlier. And this is the purpose. This is why we've been writing this long line of code all day. Sorry, I'm gonna take a few more minutes of your time. I'll try to make it as fast as possible, but I also want you to understand all this concept. So we say if, you can see we've added conditional statement. Within this, we've used our loop. We're integrating so many things together. And that's why you have to understand each of those concepts we have learned from lesson 2 onto the specific lesson. And I'm saying, because I'm referencing, the only way I can get to my value is to reference the index. And I'm using my what? My modulus operator. So uses input, I'm using my modulus operator divisible by 2, and it equals 0. Why is it get stupid? Okay, I'll still use it. So, oh, sorry. I need to write my if statement before writing the condition. So, sorry. So I'm surprised why it's given because I haven't declared the index in this new if statement. So it's index again, just the same thing. So you can always copy. I prefer to just copy this. I'm sorry, guys. Let's just copy this for time's sake. So I'm just gonna delete the body because that's not the purpose I want to do here. So it's the same, but what I want to use this specific for loop for is now to determine. So I want to use it to determine if. So I'm just gonna copy this as well to determine. Oh my God. End of loops. I copied it in the wrong place. Determine. Determine. I'm gonna do it one. Sure. And this is where I will have my if statement. So I'm surprised when I've seen the underlined red highlights. I knew there was an error. And that's the beauty of all this uh programming environments. You know, this compiler tells you where you think there is an error. And I'm saying I'm using my modulus, not modulus, and I'm saying if this number is divisible by 2 equals 0. Do we all understand this? Any question on this? Any question on this? So using the total even increment operator equals and then I need to and this is the end of if statement. Do we understand this? Any question? Thumbs up if you understand what I just did here. No thumbs up? Oh, I have some message in chat. I need to check. Only link understand. Get the link. Class code makes sense. Check. Okay, sorry, I'm just checking the comment. Okay, so what I've done here is that if whatever the user's inputs is divisible by 2, you know, if it's divisible by 2, and that's how we check even numbers. And the remainder, don't forget how do our modulus work. And the remainder is 0. Then counts it. So it's like total even. That's the value we have. So we increase that again. So it also go back to check. Don't forget, this is in a for loop. Check the condition. Check the condition. And don't forget, we discussed this in our nested loop. How do loops within loops work? So, what else? What are we to do? Finally, we're getting to the end of this. And we have to print the total number of even integers. And what do we need to print that? That was our system dot have dot print the total number of even values in the array is, so what are we to do? Don't forget the variable we have declared now comes to what? And that's our total even. That's the purpose of all this code. No, that shouldn't be within the loops. So I'm gonna remove this. Sorry guys, shouldn't be within the loops. Should be outside because it's different. It's different. It's standalone. So it's outside the loop. Then I'm gonna separate, terminate that statement. And this is this tries. We've been going through all the is just to calculate the total number of the even. So let's say so let me give the integers 1 space 2 space 3 4 space 5. So I have declared. So any question on this? So let's say which one is divisible by 2 and equals to 0? Is 1 divisible by 2 and equals to 0? No. Is 2 divisible by 2 and equals to 0? Yes. Is 3 divisible by 2 and equals to 0? No. Is 4 divisible by 2 and equals to 0? Yes. Is 5 divisible by 2 and equals to 0? No. So we have index, two values. 2, which is in our index 1, and we have our index 3, which the value is 4 as the two integer within this, as the two even integers within this array. Any question? Thumbs up if you understand what we just did. And that's not many. Good, good. That makes sense. So, good. And that will in today's class, literally. So what we can do is to use the examples, you can always populate this example as the user's variable, and I'm sure we have the same value for the array because 2 is divisible by 2, 28 is divisible by 4 by 2, 186 is divisible by 2, 5928 is divisible by 2. Only 3 here is not divisible by 2 and remains 0. So that being said, I have a very short class reflection activity. I know we are just 3 minutes outside. So I want you to go to what do I have today? 03. And this is the access code. I'm gonna copy it and paste it on the chat. So that's the access code. It's just 4 questions. I think the first one is for you to just, the code, the first code we wrote today, which is the types of cars, and just try to save it on your computer and just attach it as a Word document or PDF, whatever works for you. Is it a Word document or PDF? And just answer those questions. Very, very easy, correct way to declare a variable, and will be the output of the will be the output of the following code. I think I'm having some errors in. Can you see the okay, it's published. So I just stopped. Stop sharing. Let's check. Let's see what's happening with the quiz. So they either take blah 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 and on. is 3. Yeah, that's correct. Absolutely. Following code. Yeah, that's what I'm checking. I think you can just ignore the question 3, guys. I didn't have the code. I didn't have the code. So you can just ignore the question 3. Um, just put whatever I'm going to update that at my hand. Okay, because I didn't put the code, but I am thinking uh, simple clam. Yes, I didn't put the code. Letting me. So I'll stop recording.